Hello, my fellow Freudian slips. I'm Mr. Lunch. Today I'm going to be showing you 10 building tips for beginners. These are things that I wish I knew when I had started building. Some of these are going to be super basic. Some of you will probably already know a lot of this stuff. But if I just started the game, these are things that I wish someone had told me. We're going to be able to take something like this and turn it into something like this using these tips. Number one is the Contractor perk. This is in intelligence, and when you equip it, it makes crafting 50% cheaper. Always have this on when you're building. Number two, and this is going to make your builds look way better, is physics. There's 3 parts to this. So this one is orientation. Now, some stuff, it doesn't matter how you orient it, because it's tiles. They're square. But if you wanted to switch those out later to boards, then you're stuck with this, which looks more divisive than some tectonic plates. That didn't make any sense. The metaphor was there and I was waiting to use it for so long that I just had to say it now. Now, if you don't flip these around correctly, someone could come to your camp and have an aneurysm. Now, that could cost you legally as well, and so I don't want to get you into a bind or in a pickle. So not only will this save your camps, but it'll save you financially in the future, having your camp look a little nicer. Truth be told, if you don't do it, I've heard that God himself might smite you with the plague. Now, the same can be applied to roofs, flat roofs specifically, because they have like a specific way. As you can see, these rivulets, they don't line up. They don't line up at all. Don't worry about the flickering. That comes free with the game. You don't even need to fall first for that stroke that you can give people. And the next part of physics is gravity. A lot of people like to build houses up in the air like this so that ghouls can't come and munch on their lunch. And that's fair enough. That's a good idea. But please, for the love of Christ, don't let it just be levitating like some UFO bastard. This is something that can be easily done, is snapping some posts onto something. Just try to think, how is this item supported? How is it being held up? I've seen a house before. What did it look like? Also, gravity works on foundations as well. This wouldn't work. This wouldn't be a good foundation. In fact, that would just put more strain on the existing foundations if it was floating like that. The point of a foundation is to hold a house up, okay? Not float in the air like some floating thing. And so, I like to build by putting the foundations on the lowest most point if I'm building on a hill, and then going back up the hill like this. Because if you go this way, even if it looks like it's going to work out, a lot of times you'll look and it'll still be floating. And it's just pay attention to detail. That's going to help you out so much. Number 3 is budget. So a lot of people will find that they're running out of budget really quickly, and this can be attributed to a few different things. One of them is using turrets. A lot of people think this is going to help them out somehow, but the turrets are ass. They don't actually defend you that well, and if you look at how much budget they're using, look at the budget bar, and this is in a workshop, so the bar is even bigger. I move these things, delete them, nothing happens. I get rid of these, look at the massive chunk that's moving on the budget bar. For reference, this is a massive prefab, and the budget on these is very similar. As you can see, almost the same amount of budget, which is completely lunacy, so try to avoid using turrets and traps. What I try to use is my own gun to kill the bad guys. Lights also use a disproportionately high amount of budget, but there are something called FUs, or flamingo units, and I'll link a document that goes over in detail all the different things that cost more budget than others. But one way that you can avoid going over budget is building small. This is an example that you don't need a massive structure to have a full, complete build. I had tons of budget left over with that. Another way you can save on budget is by putting crafting benches and stuff in a shelter. Now, this is something that you can get for free. You can get this one for free anyway. And of course, you can decorate it however you want. This is what I did in mine many years ago and never touched it again. But it's a great place to store your crafting benches, get them out of the way. It's its own budget space in here, so you can put utility items that you might want in here that you don't necessarily want clogging up your camp. I will mention some collectors and things, they won't go down here. You can put your vendor down here. I don't know why you would want to. No one's going to come down here. If you want to know how to get it, there is a quest to unlock this free shelter, and you're going to have to go down to the isolated cabin. So this is Vault 76. In relation to that, the isolated cabin is right here. And you're going to pick up a quest here from a dead body, and if you follow that quest, it's going to take you all the way up here to Vault 51, and that's where you can find your free, lovely shelter. Another way that you can reserve budget is to build small. This is something I mentioned before, but this kind of ties into our next step, which is decoration. Decoration is something that's really going to help your build stand out, and it's one of the most important things of your structure. And if you build too big, it's going to make decorating impossible. These are football stadiums, I like to call them. You'll see them everywhere. Big boxes, and they'll just be, everything will be lined up around each wall, and there's a lot of dead space in the middle. First of all, the reason why I have tons of budget here, by the way, is I'm in a workshop, which I have more budget. But if you build something this big in a camp, that's going to eat up like at least half your budget. Then you have hardly anything left over to decorate it with. It's going to be hard to make it look good anyway. And this is another thing that can happen when you're decorating, and I call this barf building. And that's when you take every item you've ever owned and you build it in your camp for what can be only described as no reason, okay? So if you can avoid barf building, there are ways to clutter up your build and add life to it, and this ain't it. This ain't it. This usually happens when someone gets something from the item shop or they unlock it in the game and they want to place it down to see what it looks like or to flex that they have it, and then they just never get rid of it. And then you end up with all these disparate items looking like some kind of Rube Goldberg machine gone wrong. There are ways to clutter your build and not have this effect. So this is an example of a build where there's lots of clutter. It's literally a junk heap. But I'm using some important techniques, including physics. As you can see, there's nothing floating. But importantly, there's a story going on here. There is internal logic to everything that I have placed down. There's a theme. There's no like random Nuka-Cola bottles here. Everything has some reason for being here, and it's all kind of junky. There's nothing too clean. I'm using them all in a way that tells a story. You can tell someone built a wall, piled up some stuff here. As I mentioned in tip number 2, there's nothing floating. And that applies to furniture as well, not just foundations and stuff. As you can see, if you're building on a hill, it's really easy to have floating structures. And there's ways to get stuff stuck down if you're building on a hill. I have a video on how I built this if you want to see how I got stuff to sink down a little bit. But it's good to try to keep in mind physics when you're building. Here's another example of using physics and lore to tell a story, and it makes the build feel real. I like it when someone comes across my camp and they can't tell that it's my camp. They think it's part of the game because there's such an attention to detail. That is the most important thing that I want to stress throughout this whole thing, is to pay attention to detail, because that's really what we're trying to change. Detail goes into the physics of it, goes into how much budget you're using for what. If you build small, you can have more detail. And the story that you're telling, that just kind of informs you on what kind of items you want to use when you're decorating. I do have a video on this build, by the way, if you want to see how I did it. But importantly, there is a story being told here, and it doesn't have to be elaborate, some kind of Stephen King bullshit. All you need is to have some basic, vague idea of who is living here, what kind of thing is living here, why, what's going on, and that'll tell you where to put your items when you're decorating. And you can kind of imagine where that person would move around, where they would put their things, where stuff would accumulate and pile up over time. Is there power? Is there not power? Are they using lamps for, everything like that can be told if you know what's going on. Here's that train car build again, which I also have a tutorial on all these builds that I'm showing here. But as you can see, all this stuff is cluttered up. So it's not that you can't just clutter stuff in a pile. It's that you want to think about what you're cluttering when you're cluttering it, these things are all kind of junky items that you might find in the world. So there's nothing like too clean here, so this suggests to us that it's a post-war accumulation of junk. And in here is a little bit cleaner because someone is living inside it, so they're kind of able to keep it cleaner. But outside, maybe they have stuff piled up. There's still a rustic look, though, because we're using reclaimed items. So there's kind of like this middle ground here. But there's a clear difference between the inside and the outside because of that. Number 5 is something that is maybe a little bit more tricky, but it's honestly a super, super easy thing that'll add a lot to your builds, and that is called double walling. So you may notice that we have these cool wallpapers we can use, and if you're trying to make a room inside your house, you'll notice we don't have any interior walls. So what people like to do is they'll take 2 doorways, and then they'll be allowed to snap face to face like this, and you'll be able to put wallpaper on either side. This is called double walling. You can then, of course, replace to whatever wall you want that's not a doorway. Only some doorways will allow you to do this. The warehouse, the barn, the contemporary wall set, the original metal wall set. A lot of the newer wall types, they don't let you, but there's base game ones that will let you. You can also use it on the outside of your build if you want to add some texture to the outside. Just delete those foundations after you put it down, replace it back to normal wall, and then you can put that wallpaper right on it. As you can see, that adds a lot more options for what you want your house to look like on the outside as well, which is really neat. If you want to keep it simple, you can do flat roofs for now, but if you want to double wall arches, that gets a little more complicated. You will need these brick wall sets or that blue metal wall set, and you will need the flamethrower trap, which you get from doing a quest. Now, if you're interested in a little bit more on using this flamethrower trap and a little bit more complicated methods of building, I'm going to link this essential camp items video that I made, and that goes over some more advanced build tricks that you might be interested in. Number 6 is wiring. Now, wiring can be a real bitchaloni. And so there are a couple of ways that you can get your wiring to go where you want it. But before I show you some super easy tricks, after making the footage for this video, they came out with this generator, which you don't need to power up conduits. If you just plop it down in your camp, it turns on all your lights. So if you ever see this one, specifically the Fusion Core one, you don't need the bundle. Make sure you snag that because it is amazing for powering your build. But if you don't have it yet, if you want to power something and you need to get wires through a wall, you can of course use the method that is used in Fallout 4 a lot of times, which is you can place it through a doorway and then you can just replace that out. A lot of people will put it through windows and stuff. There's also a way of placing it on a rug and moving it around, which you're going to want to do. Because if you just put this right through the wall and you try to pick it up and move it around, it's not going to work out very well. So, like I said, you could place it on a rug. You can actually place it on anything you want. And then as long as you pick up that item, put it down, after that you can move that anywhere. It doesn't matter. The wire won't break, and you'll be able to put it through literally anything, including your grandmother's front door. Huh? As you can see, that wire goes right through the wall. No questions asked. And we can even put it out here, all the way in Wisconsin, and that wire won't even break. It'll string across like a beautiful Christmas light, I guess. You can also use wall things to do the same thing. Put it on a sign or a painting, and then you can pick it up and move it once. After that, you can put it wherever you want, and the wire will go through anything. Number 7 is plans. How do you get your plans to build? Well, a lot of that stuff is Atom Shop, but there's some base game plans that you're going to want to know how to get. One are the defensive structures. Now, you can get this by claiming a workshop and then doing a defend event. After you do that one time, you'll get access to these plans here, which are pretty nifty to get. After that, whenever you do a defend event at a junkyard or claim it, you'll get a little bit of random super basic common plans, which you can accumulate over time. You can also buy plans from train stations. There are different faction vendors at each train station, and they'll have slightly different available plans depending on what faction they are. But I like to go to the White Springs Mall. This is right here. Inside it, there are every faction has a vendor in here, so it's super easy to find the stuff you're looking for. As you can see, for example, this is a Brotherhood of Steel vendor bot, and he'll have something like advanced power connectors. This is a really good plan to have, by the way. I'd grab that if you see it. And there's also the Free States guy over here. He'll also have his own selection of unique plans. So browse around in there when you have a bunch of caps to burn. They'll basically have similar loot as what's at the train station vendors. There is a unique vendor here at White Springs Mall, and his name is Pendleton, and he sells all the White Springs designed furniture, and he'll have this in here. A lot of this stuff is unique, and you can only get it from Pendleton. A lot of that's really cool if you want to spruce up your camp and you don't have like the Atom selection, because most of the good decorations eventually that you're going to want to get are Atom Shop stuff, to be honest. But this stuff is really great and will give you a good head start. There are some plans that you can also only get from this guy named Phoenix at Watoga Shopping Plaza. Now, when you load in here, you're going to be right here. You're going to come here, turn right, stay crouched unless you have done Mayor for the day, because a bunch of robots will try to kill you. This guy has some unique plans as well. One of the ones that he sells that you can only get from him is this Edotronic right here, and he has a random chance of having it. So you can server hop if you want to try to find some plans here. And he'll have some plans that other special vendors will have. But for the most part, it's good to check all these guys if you're looking for something specific, because some of them will have the same thing. This guy's name is Graham, and he roams around. He actually has a route that he goes on the map, and you can find him and trade with him, and he has specific plans that only he has. And they actually added a bunch more not too long ago. A good way to stock up on his special plans is to wait till the seasonal event Meat Week comes along, and he actually sits in one place on the map stirring a pot of moldy food and looking angry. And so you can actually go there and trade with him, server hop, and he's going to have different loot each time because he's a different version of himself, just like I wish I could be a different version of my... I can push the cow. Another place that you can get plans are from events. A lot of the new events specifically will have their own pools of themed plans that you can only get from those events. Those are all tradable, so you can find them in a lot of player servers as well. But some of the older public events, they don't have any or very little camp plans that you can get. But the newer ones especially all have great selections of really cool stuff. And another place that you can get unique camp plans are from doing daily ops, which, if you don't know, is something that you kind of go in with your team. You hope your team comes with you, and you try to complete it in under 8 minutes for the best chance at a good reward, which you can do once a day. You can do it multiple times, but you're not going to get that rare reward each time. Now, these can also have other plans, not just camp plans, and those are all... The camp plans are all tradable as well, so you can find those in player vendors if you don't want to do daily ops. It just might be harder to find them, but they do have unique plans. And something similar to daily ops are the expeditions. Those are like big boy daily ops, okay? So imagine you're a daily op, but better. And I haven't done it on this character, so I can't actually click on it to show you, unfortunately. But the expeditions, actually the new one, Atlantic City, is pretty good and has a lot of cool plans as well. Those are not tradable, I don't think, but you can buy them with stamps. There's a guy at White Springs that you can buy them from, named Gillespie. The Great Gatsby. You can also get stamps from the scoreboard, so you technically never have to do the expeditions at all. Speaking of the scoreboard, this is what the scoreboard used to look like, and you could get camps plans, special camp plans from this. Now it looks like this, and you still can get a lot of cool camp plans from this, but it works a little bit differently. You'll have to pick and choose. Number 8, or whatever I think it is existing structures. Using existing structures is one of the best ways to completely transform your camp, because you can have stuff at your camp that you can't actually build because it's part of the world. And this is just a small example of using existing structures to your advantage. Number 9 is blueprints. Now, you may have noticed that when you move your camp, it says it creates an auto blueprint, which is like the stuff that you already built. And you might be thinking to yourself, oh, I found a better spot. I'll just move my camp and it'll pack up what I have built and I'll just place that down here. No. Nope. That's not going to work. Never has. Unless it's like a very super, super basic empty box with nothing in it, and even then it's a toss-up, that's not going down. It might be green or blue if you're colorblind, but it's not going down. That's not going to go down. Just like I said, I'm not going to go down, but she said you should. And I don't know. Well, I thought it would be fine. Anyway, speaking of shrubbery, this in the bushes says it's going to go down, but it won't. And that's because the game has a very specific sequence of how you need to put your items down in order. And a blueprint tries to put them down all at once. And it doesn't work. So it tries to put them all down at once, and it's intersecting. So never do that. Never move your camp unless you're ready to rebuild it fully, because these don't work. You may be wondering, what the fuck is the point of blueprints then, if they don't fucking work? And that's an excellent question. The way that the community has used blueprints are to allow us to place down things that we wouldn't be able to otherwise. For example, free placing walls and stairs. Those are items that you normally have to place using foundations or something. And you can place these down using certain blueprints that we've created. And there's other things you can do, like flipping foundations into other foundations. You can place down things that wouldn't normally go down on their own. You can place freestanding poles that otherwise you wouldn't be able to. And you can stack things up that wouldn't stack. You can create round structures with the foundations all pushed into each other. There's a lot of things you can do with them. If you're wanting to learn more about making these blueprints, I do have 2 blueprint videos, which I'll put in the description if you want to look into that further. It's a little more advanced techniques, but you can do so much more once you have the options to use blueprints for your delight. The 10th and final building tip is how to move your spawn. Now, you may not know this, but where you place down your module, not just when you build your camp essentially, initially, but where you move the box to afterwards, does determine your spawn point. So as a testing, I'm going to show you, I'm going to fast travel away, then fast travel back to the camp. And I don't know why I jiggled around like that first. Don't worry about it. And as you can see, when I load in, there's like a little rock lip thing in front of me. And I'm up on this hill, and the camp module is down there. So if I move the module, I pick it up. You can pick it up in build mode, just like it's a normal camp object. And you can put it down over here. And I'm going to fast travel again, and we'll see if it moves where we spawn in. That guy gave me a bunch of magazines one time. That guy's doing karate. And as you can see where we spawn in, there's not the rock in front of us. It's actually behind us, because we moved in relation to where that module is. So you're going to spawn in to the northeast of where you put your module. Keep that in mind. It's good to know, especially if you keep spawning in and people are loading into your foundations and getting stuck, or you're spawning in off a cliff or inside a pile of radiation. It's good to know that you can adjust that a little bit. Some people like to figure out where their spawn is and then build around it. And then they can kind of place their building in relation to where they spawn in a little bit better. There are some other things you can do with a module, which I also go over in my essential camp building items. If you're looking for a little bit more tips and tricks, that's a great place to start. Again, that's in the description. Let's take a moment to assess a horrific looking build that I've thrown together and seeing if we can make the same idea of a build, but using the tips that I showed, can we make this idea of a structure but not look like barf? So this is what I've been able to come up with, and as you can see, it's the same basic concept. There's a structure above a little flat area with a workspace, but I've done a lot of the things that I recommended doing. First of all, physics, very important. Everything is flat into the ground. There's no floating foundations like there was, no floating stairs sticking out, and even the structure back here is being held up by the hill. It's kind of built into the hill, and there's struts for support. All the floorboards are going the same direction, as you might imagine. We do care about all those things. There's no floating items, very important. I've also conserved budget by building small, which allows me to clutter it up in a really nice way. There's not big empty spaces where I didn't have the budget to fill. I also paid attention when I was decorating and kept things to theme. There's a story here. There's a lot to be learned by looking at it. You can tell that someone lived here, that they do their working down here, that they might live above it. And also, very important, I kept things to theme. There's not random big white nice clean walls with dirty stuff. There's not random Nuka-Cola staircases, and there's not weird colorful stupid looking dumbass shit. And in fact, everything is pretty dingy post-war. You can tell that there is someone who's living here maybe, but they kind of moved into the space after because of how things are laid out. The TV is kind of in the middle of the room like that. Over here, that you can tell there's like a story going on. Someone was sitting there playing with cards. The chairs are moved around because if you're living in a space, stuff gets moved around. Stuff gets jumbled. Human beings move stuff, okay? And I use these conduits to make like a cord from the TV. Little details, very important, and add a lot of life to the build, and they make people think, something was actually living here, or someone is living here and doing things, and so that's very important. You can see there's a workspace over in this corner, and that's kept far apart from like the kitchen on the other end. And where there maybe used to be a living room here is where the workshop is, and maybe there's just a little bit of living room left over with old junk on it. I actually have a video that I made of building this whole structure, and I put it on my Patreon. I was going to put it in this video, but it was just getting way too long. But it is a full build, and so I wanted to put it somewhere. So it is on my Patreon. If you're interested in joining me on Patreon, the link for that is in the description. It is like the best way to support me, and I really appreciate it for those who do. And if obviously there's no requirement to, I'll still allow you, I guess, to look at the videos here on the YouTube. Well, anyway, hello guys. It's okay, it's fine. Thank you so much to my patrons and channel members for your support. I really do appreciate it. It means a whole lot to me. I'm trying to put more stuff on there, so yeah, hopefully it's better for you to watch things. I also stream on Twitch, the link for that also in the description. At this point, the description is going to be basically the Encyclopedia Britannica, which is the encyclopedia, that's what it's called. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, consider subscribing, join the Discord. I'll see you guys in the next video.